Welcome to Inside Coverage. Frank Schwab, Charles Robinson. I'm Jason Fitz, the how and why of everything that happens in the NFL. And gentlemen, we have had a wild week. It's a feisty Friday. I'm sure we will find things to argue about, but I've been looking forward to this because let's be honest, we recorded on Tuesday and then like minutes after Frank and Jory finished doing all of the hard work, all of a sudden, bam, we get news note after news note after news note. We're going to break it down and figure out what it all actually means. So let's do something unprecedented and I don't know. Talk quarterbacks. Okay, so the Giants signed Russell Wilson, a one-year deal up to $21 million, including $10.5 million guaranteed. We combined that with Jameis Winston, and immediately I think it had us all thinking about the draft. So, C-Rob, first and foremost, what does New York's plan at the quarterback look like to you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when Russell Wilson signs, Jameis Winston signs, everyone thinks, well, it's over, right? The Giants have their quarterback room. And so this takes them out of the draft in terms of QBs. And it's just not the case. When you look at the money tells you the story here. And for Jameis Winston to be making effectively at best $2 million a season, for Russell Wilson to be making baseline $10.5 million on a one-year deal, you have what, on the low end, $12 to $13 million committed to your quarterback situation. You throw in a first-round rookie on top of that at the third overall pick, you're going to have about $20 to $21 million in quarterback salary in 2025. So it doesn't take them out of the quarterback market at all. If anything, it just gives them an experienced veteran backup, and then Jameis Winston, who would be a great support quarterback at your number 3 spot. And guess what? A number of teams played 3 quarterbacks in the 2024 season. So don't sit here and think that 3 quarterbacks aren't necessary in the NFL nowadays. They are. And again, I think when you look at a support quarterback situation, let's say they go and they draft a rookie at number 3, or let's say they move up to number 1, they take Cam Ward. I think between Russ and Jameis, the one who's the best support quarterback in that scenario is actually probably Jameis Winston. So I think when you factor how that room would look if they took a rookie, I think Russ would be your starter. I think Jameis Winston would be your number 2. We're talking about to start the season. And then your number 3 would basically be the rookie who you just chose and would be brought along by the backup quarterback as the season advanced. Don't forget, and it changed obviously when the regular season started, but Bo Nix was the number 3 quarterback on Denver's roster when training camp started in 2024. So nothing's changed, I think, for the Giants in terms of the absolutes of whether or not there's going to be a quarterback added in the first couple of picks in the draft. I just think it's, do they have the opportunity to get the quarterback they want?
Yeah, and that's what the question I had is this any kind of sign that they do like Shedeur, they don't like Shedeur? I don't know, but at the end of the day, whatever the Giants' quarterback plan was for the draft on Monday, it should still be the same on Friday. Russell Wilson at 37 years old should not change that. Right. What I immediately thought about, though, because we all know this. Okay, right. The Giants are going to do what they're going to do. This is the weirdest quarterback room I've ever heard, can remember. Think of the personalities in there. You have Jameis, who is one of the more oddball guys. He was hanging around Super Bowl week all week. And I think by the end of it, probably me and you see Robert rolling our eyes every time we saw Jameis walking around because he's just this boisterous, crazy kind of personality. Then you had Russ to that. And we've talked about Russ many, many times. And he's a little weird too, right? So, and Tommy DeVito, don't forget he's there too. So, and now you're going to add maybe Shedeur Sanders to the mix. I need one of these YouTube 24/7 feeds just on the Giants quarterback room. I would watch that endlessly. I think it's fascinating. I guess I get why the Giants signed Russell Wilson, but I'm also kind of why? What's the point? What are we doing here? Russell Wilson.
It's flexibility. Frank, you got to have flexibility, right?
I guess, but I thought Jameis gave you that. I thought Jameis gave him that flexibility, but the price for Russ was whatever, fine, let's bring in Russ. But I don't think he moves the needle at all for the Giants, as far as wins above replacement or anything. So,
do we believe, guys? Do we believe that Jameis understood he was likely to be the third string quarterback when he signed? I know the money looks like third string.
I think so because of money. Yeah, when you sign for that little money, you got to understand that's possible.
And again, the difference is, you can't start a season with Jameis as your starting quarterback because then that takes him out of the support role, right? I think you have to understand Jameis is there to bring along another quarterback. He's not there to bring along Russ. Russ is there to start the season if needed, right? So you draft a rookie quarterback and you go, all right, let's not rush him. Especially if it's Shador, right? We're talking about shelves here. Cam Ward is on a shelf unto himself in this draft. There's a large gap, and then there's Shador, right? Another large gap. Then there's Jackson Dart. So these are all three of those guys, by the way, the Giants, including Jackson Dart, the Giants have taken a look at. So there's a chance it's even Jackson Dart. If they don't like Shador at 3 or Shador's not available at 3, they can always trade back into the first round, which I think they'd probably have to do to get Jackson Dart. And again, when the season starts, the way it would be set up is, okay, Russ, you're going to start the games at the beginning of the season. You're a veteran. It's not like you need a ton of help to get ready during the course of the week. Jameis, you're the backup, but you're a pseudo backup. Really what your job is to support Russ as a starter, to support the young guy and help bring along the young guy over the course of the week. And we're going to do that every single week until what ultimately happens. The rookie is ready to ascend to number 2, or maybe the rookie even starts the season at the number 2 spot. And again, Jameis, this is your job. Your job is to help develop this player. You're a great support quarterback. Any organization that you talk to that Jameis has been inside, they'll tell you, locker room loves him. Other quarterbacks love him. He's a great support quarterback. He's not, it's not like Joe Flacco, right? Joe Flacco wants your job. He walks in, he's not a support quarterback. He's there to take your job. Jameis isn't, that's not how he comes off in these quarterback meeting rooms. And so I think ultimately it's just about facilitating an ability to start an experienced player who doesn't need a lot of help during the week, and then facilitate growing a young player who absolutely will need a ton of help from the second he steps inside the program. And really, that's what Jameis is there for. If anything, to me, this is potentially, we all know that Jameis is going into media when his career is over.
You think so? Yeah, he was auditioning all Super Bowl week, yeah.
Jameis could be a quarterback's coach. Jameis could absolutely develop himself into an NFL coach at some point. And, I think that's really what his role is now in the NFL is to, and he'll continue to pile up years, I think, as long as he's willing to help a starting quarterback, help a young quarterback, and be a player who's there to help be a developmental coach.
You know what I think? You know what I think Jameis Winston's going to be doing in 2042 or whatever? He's going to be head coach of Florida State. Is what he's going to be. Like he would be perfect at a college situation, wouldn't he? Like
maybe.
He's just like you said, for all the reasons you said. Like he is very good at everything he does, and I think that the one thing about this big picture is I do think this is another step towards we're seeing teams thinking about the quarterback room differently than they have. Like forever and ever it was static. You can't bring in a guy to challenge this guy, and this guy's feelings are going to be hurt, and that guy's feelings are going to be hurt. You've seen Atlanta kind of get the ball rolling with this by totally doing this in a weird way where we were like, they're not keeping Kirk Cousins around, are they? Well, yeah, they are. Like, unless they get a really, really good offer. And now you see the Giants say, we're going to sign 2 veterans, and then we're going to draft somebody. Because why should we think about this in a linear way? Let's start thinking about it differently, because getting the quarterback room right at the end of the day is the goal. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that some NFL teams are starting to say, why are we doing this the same way every single year when we're never getting it right? Let's start to be a little different about it, and maybe we'll get it right that way.
I do think, too, guys, that there's an element of this that speaks to protecting yourself in the draft. If the draft board doesn't go your way, you've still got a quarterback. And I think that's important. The other part of it is so many people have talked about what all this means for the Giants. I would say this. What if we flip it? Because I think this means something for the Titans. We've now gone through this entire musical chair situation, and the Titans have done nothing at quarterback. And we know that Will Levis isn't the answer. And we know that Callahan has made it clear that Will Levis isn't the answer, right? So, like, as much as we keep talking about what's going to happen, like, I do think sometimes you have to take all emotion away and just look at what roster moves have been made and what does it mean for the draft. I'm more confident today than ever that Cam Ward is going to be the first pick in the draft. Like, I just don't see any way possible, even though I still say if I was the GM of the Titans, I would take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. I'm not, right? Like, I think the fact that they didn't bring any of these, they didn't bring in Jameis, they didn't bring in Russ, they're not a player for Aaron Rodgers, they haven't brought in anybody to help the room. So that to me means that they must know that their answer is going to come in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actions are speaking in Tennessee right now, and they haven't been in on anybody. And not only that, it's emanating from inside the franchise that Callahan and Will Levis are not long for each other's company. That Levis is not going to have a chance to be the starting quarterback there. And I think other NFL teams think that Will Levis could be made available as we head into the draft or during the draft.
Not everybody all at once, guys. Will Levis
I
might be available.
Hear me out on this, though. Like, I talked before he was drafted. I talked to 3 different guys that covered Kentucky at different levels of college football. And one thing they all told me was that the big knock on Will Levis internally was that sometimes his confidence got a little cracked. He's a I love you guy. Like, you really got to tell him I love you. And his mistakes stick with him. And so he doesn't necessarily respond the best to being just absolutely torched for those mistakes because they stick with him. That's what I heard before he was drafted. Now think about what we heard from Callahan last year when he's just sitting at a podium basically saying this bum's losing us football games. Like, those two things can't mesh. See, Rob, like if the presumption is you got an I love you quarterback that really needs to be loved back, and he's in a relationship with the coach that frankly is going to use his podium to make sure he knows that his actions are unacceptable, I don't see how that marriage ever works for long.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a fresh start. He needs a fresh start. The same way Kenny Pickett clearly needed a fresh start in Pittsburgh. I think you have some of these guys. Teams are less afraid, I think, to move off of quarterbacks taken in the first and second round after a couple of years if it does not work. We've seen that happen in recent years where a multitude of guys have gotten moved. Obviously, the famous Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that, Justin Fields, that draft, you will see teams that will pull the plug, and sometimes it works out well. You see Fields goes to Pittsburgh. Not great, but look, he got a chance to experience a different organization, to put down enough film to earn himself another shot at a starting job with the New York Jets. And I wouldn't rule out, look, Levis has got tools. I've told people this, when you look at the quarterback class coming in now, as far as just physical talent, like what he brings to the table and his size, he matches up better than basically every quarterback in this draft. He's got the arm, he's got the frame, he's got, stature. He's very athletic as a player. He struggles. He's got the Carson Wentz gene there. Well, he'll make crazy mistakes during the course of a game, and then that compiles, and then it's ultimately over. I don't think it would be the worst thing for Will Levis to go somewhere else where someone wants to give him a fresh start as a backup. The pressure's off. He can maybe learn a different system, and then see ultimately how it develops. Send him to the Rams. Let me see what Sean McVay can do with him as a backup. Send him to, and Matthew Stafford starting in front of him. Send him to.
That's actually a really interesting fit. Yeah.
I think the Rams, I've thought about that before. I think, being behind a Matthew Stafford and seeing how he prepares, being with a Sean McVay to basically crawl inside his head and reprogram all those buttons would not necessarily be the worst thing, particularly if you're going to have Stafford for, let's say, another 2 seasons. It would be great for Levis to sit there for 2 years and just see how it's done differently, particularly with a pro like Stafford in front of them. And their games are somewhat similar from a talent standpoint. They do have those arms. Stafford is absolutely an underrated athlete. It would not be the worst fit, I think, for a backup situation when you're talking about Will Levis, and you could get him cheap.
I got an even better fit. Okay. So we're talking about Will Levis as a guy who can make some plays for sure, but then just loses his mind for like 5 or 6 plays a game, makes terrible turnovers. He's probably never going to kick that habit, but maybe. I say send him to the Giants. Let Jameis work with him, because Jameis never does that. Come on. Let's just get Jameis and Levis together.
You just want Will Levis, Jameis Winston, and Russell Wilson
Will Levis
in the same
Jameis
room.
Winston like 10
We're
years
wasting
removed,
podcast
right?
time here.
Oh my God.
Come on,
That's a bit.
what are you doing?
All right.
Knock it out.
By the way, Fitz, to your point about Cam Ward going first, BetMGM has Cam Ward going first overall all the way up to minus 2,000, which is, for anybody who knows any gambling at all, it means you bet $2,000 to win 100. It's pretty much a lock. I know betting markets aren't the be-all, end-all when it comes to the draft especially, but yeah, Cam Ward has to go number 1. There's been no signs of anybody anywhere saying the Cam Ward won't go number 1 to the Tennessee Titans, really. I think probably, see, Rob, they're probably just doing this whole like, well, we don't know yet, because who knows who makes a call and just offers you something crazy and you got to take it. Because there's been no sign that they're doing anything but taking Cam Ward at number 1.
That's it, Frank. I mean, you don't close it off because you just don't know what kind of craziness can get thrown in the mix. And I think if it's to move up to one, it's going to cost you multiple first round picks. I truly believe that. I think even if it was the Cleveland Browns called and said, look, we got to get a quarterback here. Clearly Cam Ward is the guy we want. We're one pick away. We're so close. Are we going to do this thing and settle for somebody else who may be okay? Yeah, we can feel like we can work with. Or are we going to go get the guy who we absolutely want? I know it's scary for Browns fans to sit there and think again, like seriously, would we give up the farm again for another quarterback? But that's how the Titans would approach that negotiation. They go, you're coming to one. We don't care if it's one spot. Yep. You're coming to one for a quarterback. Look at history.
Big gap
what does it cost? And that's the argument at the negotiating table.
This isn't last year where it's like, Caleb, Jaden, Drake, they're all kind of the same.
Right.
No, there's a big drop off from 1 to 2.
Yeah, massive. And so I think if you're the Titans, you're sitting there saying, we don't care where you're coming from. It's the player you're coming for. He's clearly separated himself from everybody else. And I think after his pro day, you keep talking to people and he's certainly got his fans who will tell you like, hey, he's better than what people have really made him out to be. Like I had a scout who was like, I'm so tired of hearing, last year's draft, he would have been the 7th quarterback drafted or the 6th quarterback drafted. He's like, that's a load of He was like, he probably would have been the 4th quarterback drafted. He's like, but look at the top 3 guys. Caleb, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May were exceptional talents. It's pretty great to be the 4th guy and the 3 guys in front of you are exceptional. Maybe you're not totally exceptional, but you're pretty damn good. And so I think if you're the Titans and the Browns call, and Jimmy Haslam, by the way, the owner, has been in on these dinners with all these top prospects. He's been there for the personal workouts. He's the one who would have to green light this because he's the one who effectively made Deshaun Watson happen at that contract level with those guarantees. I think when you look at Jimmy Haslam, it's just as important for him to dig them out of this situation as anybody else because he's as responsible for the Deshaun Watson mess as anyone else inside the Browns organization. So if you're going to move from 2 to 1 because you want Cam Ward and the Titans say it's going to cost you the number 2 pick and 2 future first rounders, or the number 2 pick, a future first rounder, and a package of other picks that we equate to being first round value. The owner's going to have to go, yeah, okay. I mean, we got to do it where this is the hole. There's nothing we can do to get out. So I think for the Giants or the Browns at 3 and 2 to get to 1 to take Cam Ward, it's going to cost a ransom, major ransom. And you do it. I think if that's your guy, and you got to dig yourself out, and there's really no other options there. That's ultimately what you got to pay. And I think that's why the Titans leave that door open. But as you said, Frank, I think the Titans love him too. I think the Titans will be very happy drafting Cam Ward number 1 overall and moving forward.
Real quick, just before we move on, you've talked to people that say Cam Ward would have went ahead of Penix and McCarthy. That's pretty high praise. I think we're kind of underrated Cam because there's not this, he's not Caleb Williams, right? And this class isn't very great. So, but I kind of like Cam Ward, and it's interesting to hear you say that.
I think everybody has different opinions, right? But it's how it is for every single. There are people who will tell you, like Abdul Carter, you don't want to mess with foot injuries. So if he's got a stress reaction already in that foot, well, how long before that's a stress fracture? And next thing you know, you're dealing with a foot problem with an edge rusher, which is a total, nightmare. Travis Hunter, they'll sit there and say, yeah, he's a really good wide receiver, but his routes weren't always that crisp. Though people knock that element of his game. There are people who say, hey, he's really good cornerback. He's not Champ Bailey. He's not Charles Woodson. He's not on that level. So any of these guys, you can kind of get someone to throw sort of a negative at them. But with Cam, I think it was just this, the quarterback class is so bad, and people kept throwing him in that. But as the process is unfolded, you definitely find people who are bigger fans of him. And one thing coming out of his pro day that was really interesting, an evaluator. And it's kind of a dig, but not really. The evaluator was like, he's doughy. And what he meant was to contextualize what he was saying is like, look, his fitness is not where it's going to be on the NFL level. And a lot of quarterbacks are like that. You think they're fit in college. They actually get in much better shape. And it was funny as we continued the conversation days after the pro day, he was telling me about Matt Stafford. He said, go back and look at Stafford. He said, physically now, Matt Stafford does not look like he looked when he came in the league. He's a much fitter player than he was when he came in the league. And he said the reason why Matt Stafford's arm strength has never fallen off is because his fitness has improved over the course of his career. He said, go look at Aaron Rodgers, became a much more fit player over the course of his career. He said, go look at Drew Brees, became a much more fit player over the course of his career. Brady, same deal. Brady's running a better 40 now than he did when he came into the NFL.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And he like the way he was focusing this on Cam was, he's got a really good arm right now. He's like, and he's not even in the best shape he can be in. He said he will be in the best shape he can be in when he comes in the NFL, gets with a good strength and conditioning program. And he said, so those physical tools, his ability to move, the athleticism, the off-script stuff, the arm strength, he's like, that'll all get better as Cam develops. So the way he said doughy, and you're like, geez, you're calling him doughy. I'm doughy. Like, you can say that about me. Thank God I'm not getting drafted. I'm more than doughy, right? I'm extra doughy. I'm a pack of Charmin at this point, inside a jar of mayonnaise. All right? But I'm also not being drafted number 1 overall in the NFL. But the way he focused
going to get
was
much better when you get back to the shape, Charles. Yeah.
You are not Charmin. You are a lovable teddy bear that I can't wait to hug. Okay, it's all perspective. That's all I'm saying. All right, before we get off of the young quarterback conversation, real quick, the other big news that came this week: Stefon Diggs to New England. You guys talk about how good Drake May is. We talk about it all the time. It's supporting Drake May. Kind of a value here: 3 years, $69 million, $26 million guaranteed. Does this still move the needle for? We'll start, Frank. Does this move the needle for you? Is this a big deal?
No, I think Stefon Diggs is in pretty significant decline. He was before his ACL. I don't see that getting better in his 30s with an ACL. But, and Charles can speak to this, it looks like this contract's just 1 year, right? Like, I mean, I know it came out 3 years, 69, and it was like, wow, that's a lot. And then you're like, oh, 23 million guaranteed, whatever it was. And they're like, oh, okay, they can get out of this after 1 year if they want. So for a team with oodles and oodles of cap space, I see this as no harm whatsoever. They needed to add that receiver. But just what it did to me, though, was, okay, size, you're starting to go through all of this. So what does it mean? What does it mean? Did they just whiff on last year's draft class? Because they took shots at Jalen Polk early in the second, who did nothing. He was a ghost his rookie year. Jerome Baker was another guy they got. And it's like, these guys just aren't going to do anything, right? Like, this is just a sign that the Patriots were like, these young guys ain't it. We need somebody in here who's an adult who Drake May can throw to.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the deal with Diggs being here in Houston, seeing him up close in practice early on in the training camp tour. First off, he played better than you think, Frank. He was playing some really good football down the stretch. I mean, he was performing really well. And he wasn't their number 1. Obviously, Nico Collins was their number 1, but he was a high number 2, and it hurt them a lot when he went down with the knee injury. And what I thought was interesting was he was not a problem at all inside Houston. That was a big scary. Oh, is he going to be for CJ Stroud? Yeah. You know, is he just this malcontent waiting to happen? He wasn't at all. If anything, when you talk to people on Houston's staff, he juiced the practices. Like, it was fun. Like, he was out there. He was enjoying himself. Tank Dell really responded to him. Nico Collins really liked being around him. He was a player that those guys gravitated toward. So I think you have an element with the Patriots where it's an option. There's not a lot of other great options out there on the table. Mike Vrabel has familiarity coaching against Stefon Diggs for a number of years and, you know, losing his mind having to deal with him as a member of the Buffalo Bills. And he's competitive. And as you said, look, Jalen Polk was a mess dropping passes. Javon Baker, from what I was told, just didn't know how to be a professional athlete when he got into that.
I know I got the linebacker, not the receiver. Yeah.
Right. So
I
Javon Baker.
I said Jerome Baker, I was wrong. But yeah, Javon Baker, yeah.
So you basically have 2 wide receivers for the Patriots that need somebody in the room who can show them how to do it. Right. And it doesn't mean either of them will turn a corner or suddenly blossom. I do think the Patriots, particularly when it comes to Polk, they think Polk can have a hard reset under the new staff. They feel like there is still an ability to salvage Polk. I don't know about Baker. You know, I think Baker, there's certainly people inside that building that are like, He's just got to get it. We don't know if he's ever going to get it. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But definitely when it comes to Polk, I think they feel like there is still something there to be had. And this is a signing that, as you said, it's a 1-year deal with potential after that. If he comes out and he plays well and shows he's still got legs, he could last beyond 1 year. But for what was on the table, what he can add, and I do think he can still be a productive player with Drake May, I do think it's a decent signing for the Patriots for what was there. And it doesn't damage their cap, by the way, moving forward because of the fact that it's a 1-year deal. If it doesn't work out, you just scratch it and you start over again in 2026 when you could potentially have better options either in the draft or free agency.
Yeah, if this would have been a straight up 3 year, $69 million, I would have been like, no, don't do.
Oh yeah,
I'm not sure.
It wasn't going to be that.
It's 1 year. Who cares? Like, it's really, really hard to be critical of any 1 year deal. Like,
it's a good use of the money that they had to spend. Why not bring somebody?
Right.
They got the
Limited.
money anyway.
You took your
I don't
shot,
care about.
right?
Yeah, I don't care about Robert Kraft's money. Like, he'll just make more mac and cheese and everything will be fine.
Will it help Drake May for a year? It will. It'll help Drake May for a year. Yep. That's a net positive.
I think so.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so we're going to take a break. We're going to pay the bills, and then we're going to try and figure out what's actually going on in Minnesota. Is Aaron Rodgers done, or is it still open? The Vikings spoke. It didn't answer any questions. We'll try and figure it out next. Welcome back. C-Rob, you put an article out this week on the Vikings. They addressed the quarterback room, and it was hard for me listening to it. I tried to listen to the word salad that they gave us over and over and over again because it was a lot, and tried to figure out, like, does it mean that the door's still open or the door's closed? Or are they telling us they love JJ? Like, what the hell are they planning on? Like, from what you can figure out, what is going on with Aaron Rodgers, the Vikings, and the entire quarterback shuffle?
Yeah, the general manager of the Vikings, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, met with the media, and it was interesting. You listen to him, and you're like he can talk. He can talk and he can say a lot and really not say a lot at the same time. But the truth is, if you listen to the press conference, you watched it top to bottom. I think it was pretty clear. A few things, I think, emerged out of it. Number one, the Vikings weren't going to offer Aaron Rodgers any kind of guarantee at a starting job there. Just was not going to happen. They want to move forward with J.J. McCarthy as their starter. And that raises the question with Aaron Rodgers. Does this really make sense for you? If you're coming into a situation where we really want to start the kid and we're not guaranteeing you any kind of a starting job, does it make sense to come here? Even if it's a place you would like to play and start, we know that if we bring you in, you're the quarterback for 2025. You're the starter. That's really the only way it works, is for us to basically effectively look at JJ and go, you're going to be the backup for 2025. We're bringing in this guy to be the starting quarterback. So, as I listened to it, I thought, are they absolutely closing the door? No. They're leaving it slightly ajar because some other things are in play here. Number one, they're not going to, I don't believe, add a backup quarterback, a veteran backup, into that room until after the draft. Why? It'll affect their comp pick situation. They have a 3rd and a 5th round compensatory pick based on what's happened this offseason, waiting for them next year. But if they sign another quarterback, it's going to affect the comp pick equation. They're getting a 3rd because Sam Darnold went and signed with the Seattle Seahawks. That's a very, very valuable pick. You want to screw with that by going out and say, if they were to sign a Rodgers, it would definitely affect that third round pick that they're going to get out of the Sam Darnold situation. Could they go and sign, let's say, a Carson Wentz, who was in the Sean McVay system in 2023 with the Rams? Obviously, Kevin O'Connell running that system in Minnesota. Yeah, again, you sign him the day after the Monday after the draft, when it no longer affects the comp pick situation. But the broader picture, what I think is interesting, we keep asking, like, what the hell is going on with Aaron Rodgers? Why isn't he signing anywhere? Why is this taking so long? Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers also have a comp pick situation that will be affected the second they sign Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers have comp picks in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. They have 4 comp picks sitting on the table, a 3rd round for a tackle they lose in free agency in Dan Moore. They have a 4th round for losing Justin Fields, a 5th round for losing Russell Wilson to the Giants. So these are all picks that are potentially impacted the second you sign Aaron Rodgers prior to the Monday after the NFL draft. You sign Aaron Rodgers the Monday after the NFL draft, no problem. You still get your comp picks, you get Aaron Rodgers, and you move forward. The dicey thing here is, though, it's a lot of time between now and the day after the NFL draft, both for the Minnesota Vikings and for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's why I think all these options are still kind of out there. Say something happens with J.J. McCarthy. Let's say OTAs, whatever. Let's just say J.J. has a setback with his knee. All of a sudden, the Vikings are going to go, whoa. Yeah, call Aaron. Because now, if we have some kind of a physical setback with JJ, that potentially changes the dynamics of what we're looking at moving forward. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're going, okay, well, that means we probably aren't taking maybe we are taking a quarterback in the NFL draft. We have Mason Rudolph in the fold right now. Like, what are we going to do here? Do we just go ahead and just say, okay, well, we know Aaron's coming the Monday after, so let's just put our hands together and pray and that nothing changes, that he doesn't have a change of heart, that some other team doesn't come out of the ether and all of a sudden go, hey, Aaron, guess what? We're having a complete, left turn in our organization, and we would really like you to come in and be our quarterback because, I don't know, we can't get a deal done with Brock Purdy and it's driving us crazy. Who knows what could happen between now and that Monday after the draft. So it's fluid. It's very interesting. And it just shows you, I think, how valuable those comp picks are when you feel like you're signing a quarterback maybe for like a 1-year deal and you don't want to lose potentially a 3rd-round pick in 2026 because of that.
Charles, do you think there's any chance that Aaron Rodgers just looks at the landscape and says, I'm just going to sit and wait? Because like you said, something could happen with J.J. McCarthy and OTAs. Well, we know something's going to happen to a quarterback in September. There's going to be a team that says the 49ers are 5-1 in October and Brock Purdy goes down with a season-ending injury. Stuff like that happens. We know it. I don't want it to happen. It's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, who's the first call you make? Well, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's on line one. He's been waiting in the bullpen. I mean, the 2023 Jets would have done that, right? Had an Aaron Rodgers been available when Aaron Rodgers went down, they would have called him right away and tried to salvage their season. Do you think there's any possibility that he just says, you know what, I'm just going to wait and be the hired gun out of the bullpen in September or October when a quarterback inevitably goes down?
I don't think he would actively choose that route. I think there's a possibility Aaron Rodgers goes, you know what, I think I'm done. I think I'm good. I'm looking at this situation. I think I'm okay walking away. And then somebody goes down and tries to convince Aaron Rodgers, particularly if it was like a playoff caliber team. Hey, Aaron, we know you're retired. We know you're
someone
done.
Called Drew Brees after he retired? That was the deal.
Yeah.
It happens. It happens all the time.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So do I think that could possibly happen? Yeah. I don't think he would prepare for that, though. I don't think he'd sit there and go, well, I know I'm going to bet on the unknown that someone's going to get hurt. And then, because you don't, who knows what franchise that is? Who knows what situation that is, right?
Yeah.
So he's not going to bet on that. I still believe at the end of this journey, when we're all done, he's going to end up signing with the Steelers. I kind of think it's going to happen after the draft is over. So it doesn't affect their comp pick situation.
Gotcha.
I would bet that the Steelers draft a quarterback, by the way, somewhere in that draft. They go and they pick a young quarterback, and then they bring in Aaron Rodgers the Monday after, and there you go. There's your quarterback room. You have Mason Rudolph, you have a rookie, and you have Aaron Rodgers in 2025. I think that's ultimately how this is all going to unfold. The question is, though, will Aaron Rodgers stay on track to that point? Will there never be a need by the Vikings? It's unlikely, right? So far, with those scenarios, it's more likely than not he ends up in Pittsburgh. But it's still time, and it's still risk for all these organizations that are involved right now. And frankly, there's still some risk with Aaron Rodgers because you never know. Maybe the Steelers start working out quarterbacks. Maybe they look at Jackson Dart and they go, hey, you know what? This guy's great. Let's draft Jackson Dart. Let's figure out a way to make sure he's our quarterback in the first round of the 2025 draft. Maybe not at the 21st overall pick. Maybe we got to move up. But it's even risk for Aaron Rodgers waiting, but that's just the landscape right now.
There is a little bit of Russian roulette on this because, as you mentioned, the Steelers have the 21st pick. So can you trust that the quarterback you want is going to fall to 21? Also of note, because it's certainly most mocks, if you're reading them right now, have a lot of quarterbacks going late first, mid second. The Steelers don't own a second round draft pick.
Right.
That was sent to
That's
Seattle.
Oh,
so
right. Yep.
if they don't take a quarterback at 21, their next stab at it is 83rd overall. The chances that they're going to find the guy that they love that can lead them to the playoffs this year at the 83rd overall pick in the quarterback draft. I mean, this feels like you're playing with fire. I think C-Rob, your point's a really strong one. But where it comes into playing with fire is, man, if the Vikings are really sitting there saying to Aaron Rodgers, we see you as a part of this team, but you might have to compete for the starting role or be the backup. I can't imagine Aaron wants that. But then if he turns around and says, well, the Steelers don't even love me enough to do this now if it's going to cost them a draft pick, Aaron Rodgers, he's a quirky enough dude. I think the big risk you take here, that C-Rob mentioned, is does he just say, screw it, I don't want to deal with any of this? Like, if you don't love me enough to sign me now, then I'm out. Like, if I'm the Steelers, I'm worried he goes into the darkness for 3 days and comes out and decides he wants to be a shaman somewhere. I don't know.
I think push came to shove, right? I think the Steelers are sitting there and Rodgers like, I'm good, I'm ready to go. Let's do it. You just say, screw the pick. Like, we're not going to, we need to have the quarterback in the building now. And we need to have him in our offense now. We need to have the players working with him now in OTAs. Let's get him in here as soon as possible. So I think if Rodgers is like, let's go, let's do it, I'm ready, let's rock, I think the Steelers sign him. I don't think then, really you push the comp pick into play. I think if everybody's sort of sitting back going, yeah, it's going to happen. Like, we know it's going to happen. We have a verbal agreement lined up that you're definitely going to come in here and we're going to draft a rookie quarterback, maybe, as Fitz said, in the 3rd round. It's going to be a developmental guy, but we're not going to leave it unaddressed. Then I think that's a different situation. But I think if Aaron goes to the Steelers and says, I'm ready to sign now, let's do it, they just do it. They're done. At that point, it's finished. And you don't have veterans like Cam Hayward who are getting asked questions about it. You don't have offensive players who are like, what are we doing here? Like, who am I working with? Like, so it's an interesting landscape. I do think comp picks are weighing on some of these situations. It's just like the Vikings backup. I think the Vikings are absolutely going to add a veteran backup who can support JJ McCarthy. I don't think that's going to happen before the draft. So look for like Carson Wentz, right, to end up signing in, let's say, a place like Minnesota after the comp pick situation is off the table.
As a lover of chaos, I will just say this. I want the Steelers to drag their feet. I want Aaron Rodgers to decide he's done. And then all year we'll be sitting here saying, what the hell did the Steelers do at quarterback? And every single time somebody has a bad game, it will be like, should they call? I mean, ESPN will spend 6 months saying, should this team call Aaron Rodgers every single day? But as a lover of chaos, I kind of like it. Okay, we're trying to figure out what the hell's going on with Aaron Rodgers, but we also got to figure out what's up with the Browns because Chipotle has everybody freaking out. I'll explain what I mean in just a second. Unless Chipotle is the sponsor of this, welcome back, by the way. I will say, I think Chipotle is wildly overrated. But this week, Chipotle was not wildly overrated.
Stop it.
Saying, it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. It's just not okay. But Chipotle's in the news because Kirk Cousins was spotted at a Chipotle in Westlake, Ohio. Now, I'll say this. I don't know. I was at Disney World, I think it was 2 summers ago. And I was walking through, and there was Kirk Cousins walking through at Disney World. It didn't suddenly mean that he was going to sign with the team in Florida. But when you're in Westlake, Ohio, suddenly we see Kirk Cousins there. And all of a sudden, Frank, it becomes immediately that he's going to be the Browns quarterback. Are you buying Chipotle leads to quarterbacking in Cleveland?
By Chipotle. I can't believe that take from you. Come on, man. I thought we were friends. I can't diss Chipotle like that. I do not think that. But I want C-Rob to speak on this because I'm as confused as anybody on this whole, like, the Browns just seem to be like chilling, like, whatever. We got Kenny Pickett. Like, what? Like,
it's interesting.
They're not in on anybody. They're not like C-Rob, what the heck is going on in Cleveland? Because it just seems like, A, it seems like a mess. And B, it just seems like they're just so laissez-faire about this whole thing. Like, whatever, it'll work itself out. They're like procrastinating. They're the kid procrastinating on his homework.
Yeah. So let me set this up. This is kind of interesting with Kirk and the Browns and all these different things. So a couple days ago, somebody comes out in the Ohio media sphere and says they're negotiating a trade for Dak Prescott, right?
Come on now.
And instantaneously, as soon as this information comes out, I'm just like, well, yeah, that's just total bullshit. because first off, I don't even need to look into this because the financials don't work. Like there's no way this can happen. And I have institutional knowledge about the Cowboys. I have institutional knowledge about the Browns anyway. I'm not even going to think about this or address it. But then you start getting text messages over and over again, like, hey, is there, like, this is getting out there now, it's spreading, like, is this real? Like, what the hell is going on? There are people from the NFL that are like, come on, this is a joke, right? Like, there's no way, this just sounds completely asinine. But you can never rule it out because the NFL is such a crazy ass place. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me, man. Like, should I even make any calls on this? Jane Slater from the NFL Network comes out and she debunks it from the Cowboys end. So I'm like, screw it. Let me just, so I don't have to deal with this anymore. Let me just go ahead and reach out. So, reach out to Dak's camp, right? Like, I'm like, all right, let me reach out to Dak's camp. Let me reach out to, the Browns world here and go ahead and knock this down from this end. I was surprised because I'm like thinking instantaneously, I'm getting a response, like instantly, right? And I'm staring at my phone. And I'm like, okay. It's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes. I'm like, why the hell is this taking so long to get a response to this? Finally, it was like the dam broke. Everybody like I reached out to was like, no bullshit. Like, it's like, come on, it's ridiculous. Like, what do you? So I'm like, okay, good. Let me go out there and debunk this. So I tweet like, don't want to address this, but Jane Slater knocked it down from the Cowboys side. I'm going to knock it down from the Browns side, and really even from Dak's side. It's not happening. It's a joke. No talks. But something happened in the wake of that, right? Some time passes. I continue to talk to different people. You have people in the Browns organization or whatever. And all of a sudden I realize the Browns are very, very happy with this madness, this ambiguity, this cloud around them as an organization. I think I know they like that nobody really knows what the hell is going on with their team. Are they trading up for Cam Ward at number 1? Are they taking Shedeur at number 2? Is it possible Cam Ward falls to number 2? Oh my God, they're going to work out with Jackson Dart. Is Jackson Dart the guy that they're ultimately going to take? And oh geez, Kirk Cousins pops up in Ohio, so it's got to be Kirk Cousins. So the great thing about this is I don't think anybody has any clue whatsoever what the Browns are going to be able to do. And I'll give you another example of this. When the Kirk Cousins stuff happens, I'm like, okay, well, I think it was pretty clear that Kirk had Kirkman released by the Falcons, that many people thought he would. Like the place he was probably going to end up was potentially in Cleveland, right? Well, the thing that complicates it was Kirk was never going to sign, even if he was released, he was never going to sign with the team until after the draft anyway, because he doesn't want to have another Michael Penix situation. And if Kirk is traded, he won't agree. He has no trade clause. He won't agree to be traded until after the draft anyway, because again, he doesn't want to walk into a situation where he gets Wally pipped, right? He doesn't want to go in and have the Penix thing unfold again. But then when you talk to people in Atlanta, I'm just telling you, I don't think they're going to let go of him. I don't think they want to trade him. And I think that's coming from Arthur Blank. I don't think Arthur Blank wants to let Kirk Cousins go. He's like,
is this because of the financial commitment, do you think?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. I think it's
Isn't that crisy, though? I mean, if that's the reason.
But Frank, that's not the only reason. I think Arthur Blank also says, hey, I was sold on this plan. This plan that we had 2 guys. And hey, if Michael Penix ends up starting, it's not ideal in one sense, but it is ideal in another sense that, hey, you got your young guy, it's squared away. And if the worst thing happens, you got to, have Kirk riding the bench making $27.5 million. That sucks. But I'm certainly not going to pay him that money to go make some other franchise better. I'm not paying this guy to go make the Browns better. Like, I'm pissed off at Jimmy Haslam in the first place because of what happened with the whole Deshaun Watson situation. First, I lose Deshaun Watson to him, which pisses me off. But then, oh, geez, it ended up being a good thing. But then you paid him that contract, which screwed all of us over as owners. No one's trying to help Jimmy Haslam out, right? So I think inside the Browns organization, you get the feel that Kirk Cousins isn't going to get traded because the owner doesn't want to trade him. Doesn't mean it won't happen. But this is all this chaos, this maelstrom of stuff around the Browns, and no one knows how this is going to ultimately turn out. And Jimmy Haslam's in on all these workouts that they're putting these top-end prospects through too. So you don't know, is Jimmy Haslam going to be the one who pushes the button and says, yeah, you know what? I think Cam Ward is our guy. We need to trade up. Like, whatever picks it takes, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, Paul DePodesta, whatever it takes. Put those picks together. Let's go get our guy and be done with this quarterback situation. I screwed up part of this too. I am telling you, I'm empowering you to make that move. I think everything is on the table for the Browns right now. And I think the Browns are sitting there. I think they know what they want to do, but they love that nobody is completely sure. And they also love that when Myles Garrett opens his mouth this week, he says, yeah, we got to resolve the quarterback situation, get a nice, like a young guy who can develop and really go through those lumps. Even Myles Garrett is throwing stuff out there that makes you go, what the hell is going on?
And, like a homeless guy could tell Jimmy Haslam to take Shedeur Sanders, and then it's a done deal.
Good old Johnny Manziel.
When Jimmy Haslam is kind of the brains behind the operation, who knows what could happen? Let's put it that way.
Hey,
the Falcons stuff is interesting because you've allowed me to think about it. It's something I think you really pushed upon me to think of quarterback situations this way of, this is the total you're paying for quarterback in your quarterback room. Yeah, it might be reverse engineered a little bit where you're paying Kirk Cousins way too much. You're not paying Michael Penix a lot, but it kind of all comes out in a wash where the Falcons aren't overpaying their quarterback room right now. Like, that's kind of reasonable to pay what they are for their quarterbacks. And it was Jory on Tuesday who was basically like, why would the Falcons just give away Kirk Cousins? Michael Penix has been injured a lot. Like, you just never know. And backup quarterback is a valuable position. So what's the value in a 5th round pick for Kirk Cousins? Like,
Frank,
who cares?
And Frank, if you get rid of Kirk Cousins, you got to go get another backup.
That's it.
That's the part. Like, this guy's like, we got to be consistent here. We got to be consistent. Earlier in this very show, we said, got to have, like, hey, 3 quarterbacks in the room for the Giants makes sense. Look at how often you need 3 quarterbacks. So now if I apply that same logic to the Falcons, well, damn, if I've already paid the money for Kirk, like, if I'm sitting there and Arthur Blank, I'm like,
sunken cost, that money's gone.
Sunken cost, like, I'm not letting him go. I don't give a damn what he wants. Like, I spent the money on him. He's going to be here. And if he doesn't like it, well, he can retire. But at that point, that's up to him. But if I'm Arthur Blank, there isn't a single reason that I let Kirk Cousins leave. Because what if Michael Penix Jr. regresses? What if Michael Penix Jr. isn't healthy? What if Michael Penix Jr. just turns out to be not as good as they think he's going to be? Like, there's so many variables at the quarterback position. Only one of them works for Atlanta without Kirk Cousins. All the rest of them, they might need him. So, kindly, respectfully, screw what Kirk Cousins wants. If I'm Arthur Blank, what he wanted last year was that massive paycheck, and he got it. So now I don't really give a damn about keeping him happy. I give a damn about keeping my quarterback room stacked.
Yeah, and
Mac Jones was great as a rookie, guys. Mac Jones was the future.
He was
a great comp.
He was the best quarterback
for
that
a year.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, for a year.
And we've seen Michael Penix start, 3 games? Like, I like Michael Penix. I think he's going to be good.
Too.
But
well, who knows?
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. But the only problem is, and I don't like this, thinking this way, but it does happen, is your young guy is always going to be looking over his shoulder. If he goes out opening day and throws 3 interceptions, you know what we're going to be talking about? Me and Fitz are going to be talking about Sunday night. You know it. Like, it's coming. Like, you invite this quarterback controversy, but who cares? Like, you got to start thinking about quarterback differently. And for the Falcons, they're probably sitting there saying, we should have won the NFC South last year. We screwed it up. We are going to contend for the NFC South again. And if we lose Michael Penix for 4 games, we don't want to have to call Ryan Tannehill. Like, we want somebody in the room that can still throw for 509 yards in a game like he did last year against the Buccaneers. So I've come around to thinking, well, okay, it's weird, but whatever. Like, this is the NFL. Quarterback's the most important position. Let's just do it this way, and that's how it's going to be. Kirk Cousins is going to be a really, really expensive backup, and that, oh well. And
Frank, here's another thing too. The Falcons, and I'm sure Arthur Blank is approaching this from the standpoint of, when has Kirk stomped his feet and made a big mess of anything?
Yeah,
like, when is he really? Is he pissed? Sure, he's pissed. Like, I don't think there's any question that Kirk he wants to go and he wants to start somewhere in 2025. I think he's a little burned here, but at the same time, he's not been someone who's going to make a total mess of the situation. And even in Washington, when he was pushing RG3 for that job, he wasn't out there making a huge mess out of things. I think the coaching staff was, but I don't think Kirk was the one ultimately making that mess. And then even from the Penix mental standpoint, Penix has been through a lot. He's been through a lot in his career. He's been through a lot, like the portal, all these injuries. He's been through a lot of stuff. I think Michael Penix is just like, I'm cool, man. Like I'm not freaking out. Like in this situation, I've been through too much at this stage to really sit here and fall apart just because I got this guy behind me who, wants to come and get the job back from me. And maybe it's not even the worst thing, by the way, for a young guy to go, damn, all right, man, I better be on it because this guy wants this job and I need to do what I need to do to go out there and compete and keep it.
By the way, real quick, going back one question, C-Rob, who do you think is the starting quarterback for the Browns on week 1?
Oh boy.
Right? Like this is like, I don't know the answer to this question. It's a weird,
like I said,
when you
I think the Browns
like
are, I think the Browns are in the situation where no one can really credibly answer that. And it's frustrating to a lot of people on the outside, but I think the Browns are like, we're good. Like we're good. And the reason I can't answer that is because if you ask me, is there a chance the Browns trade up and select Cam Ward? Yeah, I think there's a chance. Is there a chance they sit pat at 2 and select Shedeur Sanders? Yeah, I think there's a chance they do that. Is there a chance that they deal back up into the first round later and take a Jackson Dart, or maybe they trade down from 2 and take a Jackson Dart ultimately as their quarterback? I think those are all chances. I think there's a chance Kirk Cousins gets dealt to them after the NFL draft. I truly believe this. I think, and by the way, I still think there's a chance the back burner option, the old familiar, the train that he is, Joe Flacco, is sitting out there. And Joe Flacco is potentially still in play ultimately for the Cleveland Browns. So I'm telling you, I wish I could sit here and go, oh, I know exactly what they're going to do. I don't. And I think they've engineered it that way. I think they love it. I think they love the unpredictability from the outside looking in. I guess the one words that to me are credible, it's when Myles Garrett comes out and says, hey, we need to resolve the quarterback situation and we need a young guy in there who we can go through the process and grow with this player, which is effectively what Myles Garrett said. That to me says a lot, because I think Garrett probably has a decent idea of what they're leading into if they have not told him directly exactly what they're doing.
And a quick reminder to everybody, the draft order fluctuates this year because several teams have the same record. So the Browns own the second pick, but they own the first pick in the second round. They have the 33rd pick. So good opportunity to move up. Follow us on social media at Charles Robinson, at Yahoo Schwab, at Jason Fitz. Next week's the owners meetings. We're going to be stacked next week. Rate, review, subscribe. You know the deal. We appreciate you guys hanging out for a wild Friday. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to Inside Coverage.